Hey, long time no see or no hear. I apologize about that. I finished up the last few of my classes. Things have been crazy. Guess what? That's all done with, right? As I said many months ago, I was reading The Stand. Well, today, actually, literally today, just hours ago, I finally finished Stephen King's The Stand. Okay, so to commemorate, I've got here, I just got out of the shower, so my hair's pretty wet still. But I've got here the first edition, actually, of uh, I believe it was the 1990 this came out. I'm not exactly sure, but the first time complete and uncut. Now, if you don't know Stephen King, right there, he actually cut 400 pages from the original Stand. So, full disclaimer, I have not read the original Stand. Frankly, I don't really see why I need to if it was censored and cut up. I know that there's a little bit of controversy because King changed the date that it takes place. Personally, that doesn't really bother me. I don't think it's very important in the long run. I think what is important are the themes that King was conveying through this, and those were amplified by the era that it was written in and when it took place, yes, but there are problems that we are still gripping, dealing with, right, in America and as humanity as a whole. Well, also, funny enough, a friend of mine, good friend of mine, got me the Barnes and Noble edition with the gold trim on the pages there, actually all around, which is very nice. He got me this recently for Christmas, not knowing, despite how much I was talking about reading the Stand, not knowing that I already owned it. That's fine because you know what? At least I can bust this open and kind of not really be carefree about it, but I don't have to be as careful as with that first edition, right? That's something that I would like to hold on to. This is more just it looks pretty nice. I like it. It's not as great as a cover as the original, but I like, you got the crow there, which signifies Randolph flag. You got on the side here, you got the crossing swords, which is the iconic good versus evil. Sorry, scythe and sword. Scythe being evil, the sword being good. You have that here as well. And you've got one of the vials, that, maybe this has Captain Trips, but it could also be referring to the seven vials of biblical use that's kind of echoed through the book. And in the inside, we've got this kind of hazard symbol. And, it's the same book. You've got the same pictures and everything, as you can see. If you've never seen The Stand before, oh, here's one of my favorite moments. I'll talk about it later. But if you have not read The Stand before, yeah, that font is pretty darn small. And I believe that uncut, this is actually Stephen King's longest book. So, as someone said, who I won't mention, there are two types of people usually, okay, maybe three. There are people who have read The Stand and love it. There are people who are too intimidated by the length to read it, and then there are those who could not finish because the length. All right, now I'm normally a very fast reader, and I will admit this took me months to read. It took me almost all of October, all the way now to towards the end of December, right? However, that being said, I took breaks while reading it, kind of partially because I wanted to take a break, frankly. Also, the subject matter gets very dense and heavy, and I kind of just needed to step away for a moment. But every time I came back, I blew through a chunk of it. I read the last maybe fourth of this book all in like two sittings. That's how quickly I'm talking. So if you're really sucked into it, like I was, you might have actually a pretty easy time with it. But with that, it's a lot of talking before actually getting into the book itself. What is The Stand? Well, The Stand is interesting because it is Stephen King's attempt at creating something like Lord of the Rings. Now, that's not saying he's copying Lord of the Rings. What that really means, and this is something that I need to clear up because I see people parrot this a lot and not really understand what the significance of it is, that he's taking the way that Tolkien took European mythology and culture and brought it all together and told this epic fantasy story. That's what King wanted to do with American mythology and culture. Now, by mythology, I'm talking about specifically Christianity. Not saying it's a myth, but I'm saying he's playing with the stories of Christianity, um, the same way that Tolkien played around with, Nordic mythology and other pagan beliefs, and also Christianity. But also, not only that, you're also dealing with a little bit of folklore with the wolves and the crows and all that. But main thing is it's dealing with American politics and rock and roll slash folk, just music in general, is extremely important. I mean, the every book of the Stand, because it's separated into books, starts with an epigraph of a song's like one of the, I think the yeah the very first book begins with epigraph for American Tune, uh, Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult, and Shelter from the Storm by Bob Dylan. The name of the guy who did American Tune is slipping. I want to say it's Paul Simon. I could be wrong. I apologize. Anyways, Don't Fear the Reaper, incredible use of that song, and especially in the 1994 miniseries, which I won't get into just yet. So, it's a fantasy, but it's not quite a fantasy. It is set in a world where I believe it's 98.7% or something of the world population is killed by a disease that was manufactured by the U.S. Army that is nicknamed Captain Trips, which itself is a rock reference because Captain Trips is referring to the nickname of one of the prominent Grateful Dead members who was notorious for spiking people's drinks during parties. Hence the name Captain Trips, which they say, I believe, in the book originates the name Captain Trips originates around the Bay Area, which would make sense because that's where Grateful Dead was very popular. So most of humanity is dead, and what's left are they are immune, and they don't really know why. There's a lot of tension at the beginning with the CDC and the government. They're trying to figure out what is this special gene or factor that is making them immune because they cannot find anything. Well, it turns out that there's kind of a spirituality to all of this. What we have here is a group of people who are, for the most part, separated into good and evil. You have the good people who are chosen by the grace of God to survive, and they are called by a Christ-like figure named Mother Abigail to convene in what's Boulder, Colorado, and they form something called the Boulder Free Zone. Meanwhile, you have Randall Flagg, which, if you know anything about Stephen King, you've heard the name Randall Flagg before. I heard the name Randall Flagg before I even read a single Stephen King book. That's how iconic he is. So, Randall Flagg is the satanic type character. Is he a demon or is he a magician? Is he some sort of otherworldly being? It's kept intentionally vague, which I love. And so Randall Flagg, very fittingly, gathers in Las Vegas, Sin City, and forms his coalition there. His confederacy, I think, is actually the word he uses. What's interesting is that it's not exactly good versus evil as you would. I mean, obviously, Mother Abigail is good, Randall Flagg is evil, but the people, there are people on both sides in both places, which I thought was really well done. Let's talk about some of those characters, guys. I mean, Stephen King, great characters. This has some of his greatest characters that I've ever encountered. Not only for him, some of the greatest characters I've ever read, period. So many great ones. I actually have handwritten notes, so that's what happens sometimes when you're bored. So, well, and there they go. So, we've got, of course, Stu Redman, who's kind of like our protagonist. He's one of the first people to encounter Captain Trips, and he is taken and he breaks out after. It's actually a really haunting scene where everyone's dying, the government's falling apart. One of the head generals actually commits suicide, and despite knowing, actually, because they know that Stuart is immune, one of the deranged scientists actually tries to kill him because he has this philosophy of, well, all these great men in the government are dying. You're just a country hick. You don't deserve to live. You don't deserve to be immune. And so, of course, Stu escapes and realizes the world is gone, essentially. It's an incredibly chilling part of the story. He's really the heart and soul of the book, along with Larry Underwood. It's another character I like a lot. He is a rock star. He actually was like kind of struggling for a while. He finally gets his big break with the song "Baby, Can You Dig Your Man?" What do you know? The world ends, and it's pretty cool because uh, King is kind of playing with the idea of like the rock star as like the hero in a way. He's sort of like Aragorn in the sense of like being a crownless king. He actually kind of wants to stray away from that rock persona later on. He actually plays dumb that he doesn't know what Baby Can You Dig Your Man is. So in a way, that's kind of like Aragorn refusing the crown, which is great. He's a very fun character. I love his story early on. I love that in general with this book, King really takes his time with showing how the world ends. And just like the T.S. Eliot poem says, The Wasteland, which is quoted actually in The Stand, this is how the world ends, not with a bang, but with a whimper. And that's, well, there's a bit of a bang, but for the most part, it's a very slow, gradual process. There's actually a very chilling moment, a whole chapter really, where King is going back and forth with all these characters that we've never seen before. And they're just random people. He just, whether it be for 5 pages or even just a paragraph, he puts you with them and you see their demise. There's a really heartbreaking one with I believe a 5-year-old toddler whose parents die, and he wanders out and actually falls into a well, breaks both his legs, and King describes him basically starving to death in agony 13 hours later, something like that. It's truly heartbreaking stuff. I mean, this is when King wasn't afraid to pull punches. So, I mean, this is when King didn't pull punches, is what I meant to say. Anyways, so I love that. That aspect of Larry is really interesting. You have Glenn Bateman, who is such a great character. Him and Kojak, the dog, oh my gosh, they're incredible. Especially Glenn's chemistry and interactions with Stu. They take on this kind of father-son persona. I love stuff like that in books. It really hits home. Randall Flagg, of course, the main villain, who I'm just going to say because I feel like this is one of the worst kept secrets ever. Yes, Randall Flagg is the main villain of the Dark Tower. This is his first appearance outside of, I believe, a poem that King wrote before. Randall Flagg ended up appearing in other King stories, such as Eyes of the Dragon and many others. So this is really his grand introduction. What an introduction it is. Just the image of this man basically looks almost like a Bruce Springsteen type denim drifter, just slowly walking about. He's known as the Walking Dude with those worn down cowboy boots. It's so incredible with his red eyes, his dark, mangy hair. He gives off a really terrifying vibe that you normally wouldn't expect someone like that to be able to form essentially a large cult, which is really cool and just shows how, not divine, how like malignantly spiritual he is. I don't know if that's really the term I'm looking for. That's the word I found. Harold, I think, is actually one of the best characters in the book. I don't know if that's a hot take, but Harold is a disgusting character. He is like this fat slob who's extremely perverted and is constantly creeping on Franny Goldsmith, another great character. And then he goes through a lot of changes, physical, mental, emotional, and his character goes places. And I'll keep it spoiler free for now, but man, where his character ends up, it's crazy. It really is crazy. Speaking of crazy, we have the Trash Can Man. Now, apparently, this is a character some people don't like. I loved the Trash Can Man chapters. I loved them. They were some of my favorites. I love just the shift in storytelling that King does with that. The way he really gets you in his head, and it's, not a sane, sound head. This poor guy very clearly is schizophrenic, and the narration really reads that way. It's very well done. I love the fractured glimpses we get of his past and the way that that's affecting his present and ultimately sets him up for the trajectory he goes on in the future. That was fantastic. And I know that there was a lot cut from the original book with Trash Can Man, especially with a villain named the Kid, which I can kind of get why it was cut. It's very explicit, very dark, but man, oh man, does that have a crazy, crazy payoff. And it's so good. It's one of my favorite moments King has ever written. It's one of the favorite things I've ever read, and it's great. We've also got Lloyd Henry, I believe his name is. He's Randall Flagg's right hand man. He's got another incredible, incredible moment when he first meets Randall Flagg. It reminds me of the Stephen King short story Survivor type. It's very much in that vein. Basically, Lloyd is in prison, then Captain Trips comes and kills everyone, so he's left there with these festering corpses. He's struggling to eat rats, and eventually he's got to eat more than rats, guys. It's pretty darn gnarly. And while this book never really goes into full horror the way you would expect a Stephen King book does, it definitely has a lot of horrific scenes images and moments. Now, I have two more characters I want to talk about, and I'm kind of going to put them together: Nick, Andros, and Tom. I love these guys. I love them so much. Anytime that either of them was on the page, it was great. And then when they were together, it was perfect. I love them. Nick is a deaf mute who is actually very savvy. He can read lips. He has this kind of strange backstory with an albino man that is really there just to kind of explain how a deaf mute can be able to write so well and read lips so well, told in very King fashion, almost kind of like Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption, a little bit of Green Mile, kind of like that kind of vibe is what I got from it. And he's fantastic. But Tom, oh man, Tom, that's a character I'm not going to say much of, but Moon, you know exactly. Tom is an incredible character, and actually, now look, I know that this book covers a lot of sensitive ground. I'm not going to be tiptoeing on that. I'm not going to be walking on eggshells. I'm just stating a fact. This covers very controversial material. And one of those things is Tom is very, very mentally handicapped. And I can see why his portrayal could bother some people. But I loved it. I thought it was very respectful, actually. I thought it was very well done. I thought it was extremely empowering for that community. And he walks away as one of the best characters. Dare I say, one of the best characters I've ever read. And him being mentally challenged is a major plot factor, and it's not seen as a mistake. It actually plays into the idea of, we're all created a certain way for a reason, and I'm just gonna say, it's a very good reason. He's a great character, incredible character, and every moment he's on the page, I'm thinking this is one of the best portrayals of being a mentally handicapped man I've ever read. I just thought it was so empowering and respectful and memorable and all of the above. So, the major characters that I want to talk about, of course, there's so many other ones, guys. The Judge Ferris, Nadine Cross, Leo slash Joe. There's so many. And guys, it will make your head spin. I'm not going to lie. The narrative is so ambitious. There's got to be like 30, 40 something points of view you get in this. And even if it's just for a brief moment, King really knows how to tap into someone's head and tell the story through their eyes. It's fantastic. It's something I've seen before in his other books, and he's really just honing in on it here. So, it's an epic cast for an epic story. Now, The Stand is very biblical. It draws a lot from Christianity, as I said. It really is a parable of good versus evil, of hope versus despair, and the fact that we need sacrifice and we need suffering, and that everything is basically orchestrated by a higher being with a purpose for everything. Now, with that, there is a controversy with the finale of this book. People say it's a cop out, people say it's a Deus Ex Machina, people say that it's anticlimactic and all of the above, and I'm just going to say, yeah, it is. And well, that's a good thing. It is designed that way for a reason. This is a parable, guys. This is at its core a Christian work of fiction. It is a Christian allegory, and sometimes, a lot of the time actually, those allegories, those stories end a certain way. And King did it very well here. I thought it was extremely fitting. I thought it enhanced the themes that are at stake. And I think that if you consider it just anticlimactic, well, you're not really getting what King was going for with this. After all, King said that one of his big inspirations for this was hearing some, I believe, some like Southern Baptist radio priests just preaching. So of course it's going to have a lot of that in here. Um, with that being said, the ending, King has a notoriety about endings, and I guess this is one of the ones that really started that quote unquote conversation. And again, I'm just putting a foot down there. This is a great ending. I loved it. Uh, Makes you feel things, makes you feel many things, and I'll get into it later when I talk about spoilers. which actually I guess can be now. Sorry, this is very off the cuff, guys. I just wanted to talk about this book like now because I want to. So, with all this said, before I get into spoilers, The Stand is a must read. If you want a very unique piece of American fiction, a strange take on fantasy that kind of combines science fiction and horror, political commentary, all of that stuff. If you want an incredible cast of characters, if you just want some incredible damn writing, you gotta read The Stand. I know it's long, believe me, it took me months to read, but it is absolutely worth it. And like I said, once you get really into it, you will fly by. And that goes with King in general. You will fly through it. Okay? And I'm going to say this is Stephen King's best book I've read. This might be the best book I've ever read. It's incredible. It really is. And so many other people have said it better than me. Shout outs to like Brian Lee Durfee. Shout outs to Mike's Book Reviews. They both are huge stand champions. Brian Lee Durfee himself said that this is his favorite book of all time. It's a very good pick, guys. Okay, with that all being said, let's get into some spoilers. First of all, I want to talk about some great moments that I love. So, first of all, the kid being trapped by the wolves. This is after he's raped Trash Can Man. This is when he drives him out, and suddenly a bunch of wolves surround him, but they spare Trash Can Man. Trash Can Man is able to escape. The kid is trapped in his car, and we are left with this chilling Saw-like image of the kid terrified, locked in his car, surrounded by all these wolves. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if he's going to stay in there and starve to death. We don't know if he's going to make a run for it and die. But eventually, we do actually see the payoff of that, where the Boulder Free Zone group, Stu, Glenn Bateman, Larry Underwood, etc., they actually encounter the dead kid, and he's extremely starved. He's malnourished. They estimate he probably was in that car malnourishing for a week. He eventually gets out and has his hands in a death grip on one of the wolves as one of the wolves was chewing out his neck. So they both died at the same time, and their bodies are basically petrified there. Wow, what a strong image. I love that so much. Like I said before, Trash Can Man's introduction, incredibly strong, very chilling, very weird, and very sad. It really is sad to see how society can shape someone like that, especially if they have this very clear symptom of whether it be autism, schizophrenia, any of the above. Those are things that I kind of identified and for lack of a better word, diagnosed Trash Can Man with, especially with like the fixations on fire, with the hearing voices and the delusions and all that. Yeah, definitely. Fall of Society, like I said, especially like weirder stuff, like the monster caller, just this deranged guy just constantly shouting up about monsters and stuff. And just some darn weird things. Like there's this one section where a bunch of like obese African American men in loincloths like take over a news station and they're just like executing people. I believe they're government officials. They're just executing them on live TV. It's nuts. There's a lot of stuff about the media when the media is trying to report about how deadly Captain Trips is, and that the government, even as millions of people are dying, the government still is denying the lethality of Captain Trips is so absurd, but frankly pretty real and chilling. And this was done very well in the 94 series, I might add. Which, okay, I was hoping I could watch the 94 series and the 2020 series before I did this, so I can kind of talk about them and compare. But, I mean, first of all, the 2020 series just doesn't look good, guys. And I've heard it's not good. Maybe I'll watch it eventually, I don't know. I actually just started the 1994 series. I'm only one episode in, but I'm quite happy with it. I know they cut stuff. I know it's censored due to being on TV, but you know what, guys? For the budget and the scope of the book, I think so far, at least what I've seen, Mick Garris and Stephen King did a pretty damn good job adapting it. And I'm just saying, I'm a little biased. Huge Mick Garris fan. Actually was able to go to the final uh, taping of the final the taping of the final episode of his podcast Postmortem, which was really cool. And they screened Sleepwalkers in 35 millimeter, also written by Stephen King, actually his first original movie script. Anyways, all that to say, I like it a lot, and I'm excited to watch more of it. I think the cast so far is like incredible. Also, Kojak saving Stu and Tom also saving both of them. Oh my God, I was on the verge of tears during that whole section. I really thought Stu wasn't gonna make it. I thought he's gonna die. He's gonna pop the pills, and he doesn't pop the pills, and I thought he's gonna die from the bomb. And he's fine from the bomb. It was such a great moment. Kojak comes and saves him, and then Tom comes and they have this kind of adventure together, and it's so great. I mean, like I said, any time with Tom is so incredible. Moon, that spells incredible. They have a beautiful scene on Christmas where even with a broken leg, Stu works his ass off to try to put on a good Christmas for Tom, and especially reading it near Christmas time, and especially with the themes of the story and how important Christianity is to it, I thought it was just so special and great. What else? Randall Flagg saving Lloyd, as I kind of hinted at earlier. Yeah, Lloyd is starving in a cell, and he has to actually eat part of a leg of a corpse that's in there. Oh my God, that alone is chilling. But then Randall Flagg shows up out of nowhere, and there's this really incredibly written scene where Lloyd is seeing through to Randall Flagg. Randall Flagg is holding this like kind of orb that shifts, and becomes a key. And he basically gives him an ultimatum: you sell your soul to me, and I'll let you out, or you can die here, basically. So of course Lloyd says, "Yes, I'll do anything for you, my lord." So Randall Flagg puts the key in, opens the door, and as Lloyd is stepping out, he realizes, wait, this is one of those cells that didn't have a keyhole. It's so incredible. It's just such a good tease about the kind of weird power that Randall Flagg has. Nick freeing the prisoners. Such a great moment again with Nick. The humility of him to stay and fulfill his duties even after everyone else in that town is dead. And ultimately, him deciding to free them. Obviously, it comes back on him because he gets his eye basically gouged out by one of them. But that moment, I'm forgetting the guy's name, Ray Booth, that's it. The moment Ray Booth escapes for the first time, and he just walks out of the station and realizes everyone's dead and the world is over, is such an unbelievable piece of writing. I thought it was perfect. And then, he comes back and gets Nick, and it's like, come on, man. But that's what happens sometimes. Speaking of that, I will say I was a bit disappointed that Nick died so early. It felt like he didn't really get his big hero moment. I guess him warning about the bomb is kind of a hero moment. But that's what happens sometimes. That's something that I really like about King is he's willing to keep it real. Sometimes you don't get your big heroic send off. Sometimes your character arc is not completed, guys, and it's so sad. And to see Tom absolutely heartbroken, but also to see Nick speaking to Tom through the dreams and actually speaking. Nick can speak in the dream world. It was incredible. It was so moving. And then Stu having to tell Tom what happened, and Tom coming to terms with that, and he's like, I know. It's so great. I love Nick and Tom. Their little journey together is so incredible. The first committee meeting and them seeking the Star Spangled Banner, I thought was such a great and chilling scene. I know some people might find the politics boring. I thought it was really interesting. There's a lot of good uh, debates that are brought up. So many great quotes in this. There's one I really like that's said by, I believe, one of Stu's mentors. I'm not going to say the whole thing. I'm just going to say it's the one where it's like, show me a man and it'll be this. Show me two men and it'll be this. And he keeps going, and basically it gets worse and worse as it goes on. And it's basically him talking about the inevitable rot of society. It was fantastic. And Nadine's death, man, that was chilling. I mean, everything with Nadine, you almost feel kind of sorry for her, but you know, that's the trajectory. Um, oh, okay, so this is getting a little long, so I'm going to wrap this up with one last thing I want to say, and that is with the ending. I want to get more into detail about why I thought the whole finale was great and why it's okay that it's a Deus Ex Machina. This is a literal usage of a Deus Ex Machina. And guys, Stephen King is smart. He wouldn't do that accidentally, right? He understands what Deus Ex Machina means. If you don't know, that's God in the machine, and it's kind of a way of saying that God steps in and magically fixes a problem, and it deflates tension in a story. That quite literally happens in the finale of this. You have Larry Underwood and the other few survivors of their party are going to be ripped apart essentially in Vegas as Randall Flagg is gloating and putting all this blame on them just to rouse the crowd. Then Trash Can Man appears with an atomic bomb, right? Randall Flagg has this kind of orb that he used to kill Whitman, who stood up against him, and he's gonna fling it at Trash Can Man. And then they all look up and they see the literal hand of God come and basically push that ball into the atomic bomb, and it kills everyone, right? And ends Randall Flagg. Now, guys, as I said, this is a very Judeo-Christian inspired story. This is a story about sacrifice, about suffering. And Larry even comments that this is his sacrifice, right? That he basically knew he was going to die. That Mother Abigail was sending them all out essentially to their deaths because that is what's going to fix the world ultimately. So it makes perfect sense. I thought it was really well done. And going off of that also, the way this book ends is it's so bizarre because you have that moment you think, oh shoot. And then you have everything with Stu, and it's very rousing. You get more and more hope. You go from absolute despair to pure hope, and then he gets to Boulder again. There's the drama about their son, Stu and Franny's son, Peter. Well, actually, Franny's son, but you know what I mean. About whether or not he's going to live, because guess what? He got Captain Trips as a baby. So again, you start having a mix of hope and despair. Then they find out that he's actually getting better and is building an immunity. Great. Okay. Then there's like a time skip, and Stu and Franny have this little family. They're going to Maine because Franny is homesick, and it's very hopeful. But then Stu starts to think about where this is all leading. Where is humanity going to go? All of these toys of destruction are still out there. And he asks Franny, "Do you think we've learned anything from this as humanity?" And she finds herself just instinctively saying, "I don't know." And it's something that she really regrets. She says that she didn't want to say it, but that's all she can say, "I don't know." And then right after that, we go into Randall Flagg is reincarnated in some foreign land where they don't speak really any known language apparently. Apparently Randall Flagg can speak so many. He speaks like English, German, Spanish, etc. None of them work. They all start worshiping him like a god. And there's this incredible picture at the end of him just with his arms out, his chest bare, and all of these people, these natives, wherever they are in this weird jungle, are all gathering to him. So you go back into the despair. You realize that, and Stephen King, so he didn't like Wheel of Time, which sucks, because that's like my favorite series ever. But he plays on that because he talks about time being like a wheel and how things never really end. That there will always be good, there will always be evil. So it really hits you at the end there. It's like, oh man, like what did we learn from this? Not only is Randall Flagg out there, but there's the real possibility of more war between the survivors. It's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking, guys. And it really affected me. It reminded me a lot of Oppenheimer's ending, funny enough, because there's that same kind of realization of, oh man, I think we're leading towards destruction, and there's that uncertainty. So, I think that about does it for The Stand. God, how heavy are both of these combined? Whoa, pretty darn heavy, guys. As you can see, big fan, absolutely big fan. Who knows? Maybe I'll get a mass market paperback. Maybe I'll try to find the original version, guys. I don't know. Well, up next is The Dead Zone by Stephen King, which got a really good looking adaptation by David Cronenberg, of all people. And it also apparently got, I think, a sci-fi series that actually looks pretty darn good. But, before that or after, I don't know. I don't really have a schedule, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not doing this for like monetization. I'm not doing this to build like a name. I'm really doing this just for myself because I think it's fun and I want to get my words out there. Anyways, yeah, The Stand might be the greatest book I've ever read. Absolutely loved it, and that's all. All right, I was hoping I could get this at 35 exact minutes, but you know what? I don't need to. All right, until next time.